Hey guys, how you doing? Cosmos TV here, and today I'm taking you guys through the very first playthrough of Satisfactory that we're doing here. And as you can see, we just finished the intro and we're getting into looking for our nodes, and I do have my buddy Drift Gang with me here today to kind of help me get rid of some of the slower parts of the early farming so we can try to get this done for you guys in a decent time. And one of the first things you're going to notice is once you get to that first node, you're going to notice the purity of the node. And there's several things to take into consideration, one of those being the type. So impure nodes are the most inefficient nodes that you could possibly have in the game, and I would highly recommend you do not make your first base around an impure node, as you're going to have a much harder time as the game progresses and as you're starting to make progression with your factory. The second thing being, as you saw, we found a slug there that'll be able to be researched later, and I will show you guys how to do that. So don't be afraid to do some exploration and kind of pick things up. I'm grabbing grass, I'm grabbing all these little nodes because you're going to need all this stuff to get started. Usually when I get started with this, I try to look for and locate at least 3 different types of material. Iron, concrete, and copper are my first 3 sources that I go for almost instantly, and I think nearly everybody does with the game because they're the first 3 resources you need right away. Wood being one of the better things to pick up. If you see it, don't be afraid to grab it. It's going to help you with your fuel for your early power source later on coming up in the video. So I'm running around here with my buddy, and we're just kind of farming resources and grabbing up stuff for our generators and trying to grab any slugs that are available to us at that time. So first things first, the reason you don't really want to make your camp around an impure node is the node qualities vary between impure, pure, and normal. And I would recommend at least finding normal nodes that you can deal with. And the reason is, with a Mark 1 miner, an impure node gives you 30 resources per minute. A normal node will give you 60, and a pure will give you 120. Now as you get your Mark II miner, that doubles. So an impure would be 60, a normal would be 120, and a pure would be 240. Obviously pure nodes being the best, but if you're taking on the grasslands as we are here, definitely would not recommend trying to find pure nodes. They are very uncommon for you to find here in the southern region of the map. All 3 of the different maps are just not different maps. It's the same map with 3 different starting locations. The desert and the northern forest have far more pure nodes than the rest of the map does, and it's a lot easier in my opinion on those maps. You're just limited by the amount of space you have, but you can avoid that by building up. And we'll talk about all that in upcoming. But today, we're running around, we're getting started, we're getting set up. 2 things you're going to need right away. A lot of concrete. I tried to connect my entire factory on the same foundation. So the very first foundation tile I lay, I try to build the rest of my factory from that foundation tile. And I do that because in a future update, from what I understand, they're supposed to allow you to power your foundation tiles, and foundation that is powered will power anything and everything you put on it. So if the whole entire foundation is connected and touches each other, then you're going to have one factory that's powered autonomously, so you don't have to worry about any power pole running and any of that. It's power one tile, the whole thing's powered. So I'm mining all the miscellaneous nodes we find here. Not, they're all over the place. You'll see these things everywhere, and this is pretty common. Typically I try to get somewhere between 300 limestone to get started because that'll give you 100 concrete. I believe in order to finish this, you're going to need quite a bit of iron. Copper you don't need nearly as much, so I try to build my first hub somewhat closer to concrete and iron. Copper, I don't mind a little bit of distance because you can run back and forth to it, and your portable miners will help take care of that for you initially. So I usually grab about 300 copper to get started and turn that all into wire and then my cables, and that'll get me through the first 5 upgrades that you have with your hub. So tier 0 is pretty simple. It's kind of like your tutorial upgrades, kind of trying to get you to going into the basics, but a lot of people can get confused when they're getting started with this game. And we're getting pretty close to our starting zone here, so I've played several different starting points on these maps, and I think this one right here is one of the better ones for this area. The copper node is normal. There's 4 limestone nodes right here, and there's also 4 iron nodes right here. Very, very, very good starting point for this base. It's wide open. There's not a whole lot to worry about. I got stuck here on this corner. There's not a whole lot to worry about here. There's a little bit of poison, but you can avoid it. As you can see, I'm scanning for my iron, and there's so much iron available in this area, so it's really a good starting position for this base. Now, if you're wondering about where this starting position is, I can bring the map up and show you. And as you can see, we're on the southern point here of the map, and there's 4 iron, 4 concrete, and copper ready for us to go. So it's a really good point, and it's one of my favorite spots on this map because all the nodes are of normal purity, so this can have a lot of potential. So as we get going here, I'm just clearing out some monsters and trying to get us started. You gotta get these big ore clusters off the top of the node, or else you can't place any miners on them. So that's something to keep note of if you're having issues with that. You just got to remove this portion of the node and get it ready. So as I'm laying the hub down, where those big beams are, you can see that's where the generators are going to come up on it. So I'm trying to place that in a place that will make them more accessible to my machines, and I'm getting ready for the start of the first 5 hubs. So as we're going through, you can see now I'm starting to craft and handcraft. So handcrafting is not the worst thing you could do in this game. Yes, you have to do it by hand. Yes, it takes time. Oh, my hand hurts. However, it's pretty efficient in the early game because the machines work so slow and your conveyor belts aren't really working as fast as they can. So don't be afraid to go out there and mine a bunch of resources. Typically, my friend and I, we do the first 5 upgrades by hand, and we can usually get through the initial entry of the game within the first 20 minutes or so. Working together as a team is always great if you have a friend. Multiplayer is a little buggy right now, so my buddy does have some problems at times with how the game functions and works for him. But for the most part, we have a really good time, and this is one of the initial drawbacks to the early game. But don't be afraid to take your time. That's the other thing with the game. You can't be afraid to take your time and learn the processes that are implemented for you to understand how the factory works. So as you're going through and you're handcrafting and doing all of those quintessential parts to getting initials done, you can really start to understand how you want your factory to lay out. You can really start to plan what's going to happen. Don't worry about all the trees and brushes. You'll be able to remove all that stuff once you start upgrading and getting through the tiers as you're progressing faster and faster. But for right now, we're just pushing through the first, and I will edit out the rest of my handcrafting. I just want you guys to see some of it as we're going through it, and same way anybody else would. So we're going to go through the first couple really quick. There's no real reason to stop and study what's coming about or what's being done with the game at this point, because the first couple upgrades you don't really need to stop. The first upgrade, you're going to be able to search for copper, and you already mined copper and you know where your copper node is at this point, so there's no need for me to scan it and go looking. What the first thing I try to do is I intend to make 9 portable miners. Now, why so many? Well, you can place multiples of your portable miners on nodes, and you don't really have to babysit and go hand mine. So as you start going through, it's about automating things, so you have to do it less and less, and the machines do it for you. Portable miners are the first step to that process, so I won't have to go now mine ores, something else will do that for me. You don't have to worry about building so many of them because you will wind up using them as you progress through the game. So I build roughly 9 off the start, 3 for each, 3 for iron, 3 for concrete, and 3 for copper. So as you can see, I'm going through the process of doing that now, and we're getting ready to place our portable miners. And now that we are ready to go, we've got the materials, we're going to build our portable miners. Like I said, again, I do roughly 9. I like to do 3 per node, 3 for iron, 3 for copper, 3 for concrete, just because I don't have to worry about, do I have enough? Am I going to have enough? I get it done, and I can come back and get the ore as needed. Copper's not really a really big deal to get first. I would like to automate my concrete, my iron right away, because you need those basics for building, and you can get a lot of wire fairly quickly from just gathering the ore itself. So typically I prefer to do it this way, and we're gonna go ahead and do 3 as well on our copper over here, and since it's so close, we can just run over, grab it as we need. So also along the way, you want to start collecting biomass, so that way you can create the power as you start to automate. Wood is so much better than leaves, and I'll show you guys this as we get the hub upgrade. I don't believe that we have the biomass recipe yet for wood, but wood gives you 25 biomass for every 5 wood, whereas leaves, I believe it's 4 for every 10. So this abundance of wood here is kind of a blessing, and it's really close to the base, and it'll give you a lot more power for a lot longer. And I see this slug up here, so we'll go ahead and we'll try to get up around here real quick and grab him real fast, and then we'll head back down and we'll start talking about the next hub upgrade. Alright, so now that we have everything, I think I need a couple more plates, screws, so I need the reinforced iron plates. Let me get that done real quick and we'll be ready to go for hub upgrade 3. Now this is going to unlock the recipe for biomass wood. It's also going to unlock our foundations and conveyor belts. So now that we've got the conveyor belt upgrade, there's our foundations, ramps, and some walls. The walls you won't really necessarily need right away, and then we're going to go ahead and just try to clean up our inventory, get everything out, make some concrete, so that way as we begin to build, we have the concrete to start laying the foundation for our operation. And this is all beginning, so remember, it will move. We will deconstruct everything and move it as necessary and as need be for the time being. We're going to get what we need to get through these tiers pretty quick. So as you make the biomass and as I said the wood, a little tip here, if you hold left control, drag and move everything, it'll take all of one resource type and move it all at once. And as we get ready to build, as I said, I'm going to grab up whatever concretes we've made, and I'm going to go over here and I got to move the miners. I like to take the closest one first. Doesn't really matter. You could take either or. Simply put, you're just trying to go ahead and get what you need to get done. And for us, this instance, it's going to be getting iron rods, iron plates right away. This is going to help you guys out with these early pushes, so you don't have to sit there and hand crank the game and you can get things done as you need. So in order to do that, this first foundation lays the foundation for the rest of my base. You don't want it to go down into the ground like this. This is not really ideal. You want it to pop up just a little bit. You can place miners on top of these foundations. And as we lay the foundation, we're going to get ready for Hub Upgrade 4. And you need Hub Upgrade 4 because this is what builds the automated miner for you and storage containers. So not only that, the hub also gains an additional biomass burner, and as we start to build these buildings and get everything done, it will be a really big impact for you to keep progressively going. So we're getting everything together to go ahead and lay down our first factory line to getting iron plates. Excuse me. So the other thing to keep in mind is when you connect your power grid here, you're going to need to connect both the generators to the line. If you connect one generator to it, you will not be able to connect the generators to each other. So you can add things to your to-do list. This makes it so that way you can go ahead and make sure you have all the resources necessary for you to build. And I did this as an example, so this way we're ready to go. And I'm going to go ahead and cover up the node with foundation because you can build on top of foundations. If you can't, you just delete the foundation, build your miner. You can place foundation under it. As you can see, I can move around. It's not quite centered, so I mean, if you're OCD, that might tick with you just slightly. You probably have to deconstruct everything to go ahead and move things around as necessary to get it done. But we're going to go ahead and lay down, and since it's not straight lined up, I can't line it up perfectly, so I'll have to move my smelter out a little bit. So in order to do that, I'll just move it out here, and I like to center my smelter. And then you connect that with a conveyor belt. And then you're going to come up here and set it to iron ingot because you're mining iron, and then you're going to build your constructor. The green line will show that you are in line with the other building, and you can connect it straight with another conveyor belt. And I set this one to iron plates because we're going to also do iron rods next. And I put everything into a storage container because the constructor can only hold 100, storage container can hold 2,800, I believe. And then everything's got to be connected to power. So power poles initially only have 4 slots, so I do 2 on one, and then I build one for my constructor. I like to put it in the middle so I can run the power poles between buildings if necessary. And then you add biomass. I didn't do that earlier because I don't want to just unnecessarily burn biomass for anything. And then as you can see, it looks pretty clean. The power lines aren't all over the place. They're in order. You add biomass to your burner. I'm not going to add the other 200 because the machines that we have don't require anything more than the 20 that's currently being produced, and I'm not wasting resource. The more biomass you waste, the more you have to go farm. Could potentially cause you issues in the long run as far as wasting your time. I'm just going to add what I have in my inventory to this so I can show you guys the amount of power that's being taken. And it's 13 megawatts out of the 20. So this one system, miner, smelter, constructor, takes 13 megawatts to run if it all runs at the same time. So now we're going to go ahead and get ready to add our second line, similar to the first one, for iron rods. The basic building blocks, they help you build everything. So if you could start automating certain things, it just, like I said, it makes your time easier, and that's the whole point. That's what you're going for. So as you can see, I can only move it 4 spaces. There's a little trick, and that is to delete a foundation, and then you can middle mouse wheel scroll around more than 4 ticks. So something to keep in mind. Same thing, I'm going to line my smelter up with the other smelter because it's not going to be centered yet again, and as you'll see, the green lines will line up to show that everything's centered on each other and itself. So connect it all up with conveyor belts again. You got to make sure you set it to iron ingots, and then you choose which recipe you want. Since you have iron rods is the choice here. Same thing, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line this power pole up with this one here because the other one already has 4 connections, and this way I can just run through and connect up. You can put your power poles down however you want. It doesn't make a difference. It's all going to do the same purpose, and you'll notice that everything just shut off. That's because now I'm going to need to add more power to the system, so now I'll add that biomass to the second generator that we were holding on to because we're using more than 20 megawatts. So we need both of the generators now. And then you just turn your circuit back on and you're good to go. So like I said, it uses 13, now we use 26. And last but not least, the other important resource in my opinion is concrete. Concrete, since I lay everything on foundation, I use concrete like crazy. So I like to get concrete going really early. I actually prioritize concrete over copper. You can play the game however you choose to play. And as you can see, it was spinning multiple directions, but now it only goes 4. So if you remember the trick like I told you, it'll fix it. You can set it up. Again, it's not centered, so I'm going to do the best I can to try to make sure I can get it somewhere. Now for concrete, you do not need a smelter because it's concrete. You only need to build the constructor. So I just need to get some reinforced iron plates really fast. And I don't believe that I have the resources on me, so I got to go grab those up real quick. Should be pretty easy since we're making them now, and as you can see, the production's going pretty well. We had quite a good little stash going, so it'll make everything easier in the long term. So as you start to do these early things, now you only have to run and go get copper. Or if you do copper first, then you only have to go and get iron. So it's your choice how you choose to start the game. I'm just showing you how I do it. It makes my start just a little slightly easier. And again, concrete, just I put everything on foundation. So I got to get that extra concrete to make sure I have room for my constructor. And I'm going to just set this up wherever I so choose, due to the fact that the belt is not going to be lined up perfectly and everything empties into storage containers yet again. It's fairly simple setup. It doesn't take a whole lot, and it's just really space efficient early on, and you're going to move everything when you decide to upgrade your factory. So don't be afraid to get to building. Because you're going to move everything, and you're going to move everything multiple times because you're going to want to play the game, but don't be afraid to build. The whole point of the game is to build. And you can always put your portable miners away in a stash, or you could go drop them on the copper, so you could just come pick up core if you want, copper if you wanted to, and it'll make it really simple for you in the long term to just get wire knocked out. You only have to do one, and by the way, if you just set like your phone or something on your left mouse button while you're handcrafting, then you won't have to hold it down yourself. You can automate that process in real life. You can add the constructor and the miner here, and it caps out at 35 megawatts, so you're not going to blow your power circuit. And then it's pretty much a waiting game unless you wish to automate everything yourself. And this time we'll go ahead and upgrade to Hub 5, and this is going to bring in the dropship. The dropship, it's pretty cool animations in the game. There's a lot of really cool animations in the game. But the dropship, he pretty much takes every upgrade you do here on, because this is more or less like the tutorial tier. So he's going to deliver the resources back to Space Commander or the spaceship or wherever he goes. There's a lot of different theories. You could definitely check it out on Reddit. But Hub 5 unlocks now the M.A.M, which is the molecular analysis machine, and it makes it so that you can start researching things. And the green power slug you researched, we picked it up earlier, and this is going to unlock your power shards. So those are going to allow you to overclock buildings in the long run. We've also unlocked extra biomass burners and the space elevator, which we'll get into in the next video. Thank you guys, and you all have an amazing evening.